All right, let's go ahead and get started. So hello to all of our newly admitted Tritons for the fall 2022 year. On behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Lisa Swid, and I am an International Student Advisor at the International Students and Programs Office. And we are also joined by a few of my colleagues, Joe Peters, Emily Stewart, Grace Fuller, and Karina, who are here to help answer some questions that you're welcome to put in the chat. We welcome you to wait towards the end of the presentation to ask any questions, because we will likely cover a lot of information that will answer some of your questions. So a few housekeeping items before we begin today. So first of all, you're in listen only mode. And that means that you can hear us, but we are not able to hear you. And secondly, we are recording. So you will be able to review this webinar, the recording of it at iWork.ucsd.edu. So if you miss anything, don't worry, you can always go back to this webinar and review the information again. And then lastly, feel free to use the Q&A box to get your questions answered. We will do our best to get through all of the questions that you have at the end of the session, but if we don't get to it because we run out of time, don't worry, there's lots of ways to get in contact with our office. If you go to icontact.ucsd.edu, you'll see the different ways and avenues that you can connect with our office, whether it's by Zoom or email or in person at the front desk. So definitely review icontact.ucsd.edu, especially if you don't get your questions answered today. So today's session, we will be covering a lot of information about working in the United States, specifically for graduate students. And we will be talking about employment eligibility for F1 and J1 students, working on campus and off campus, both during your program as well as after you graduate. And then we will provide some resources that are related to your employment eligibility and some tips for preparing for employment. And throughout our time together, I might ask some questions, so make sure that you pay attention. Go ahead and locate the raise hand icon so that you can stay engaged stay engaged with the presentation today. So before you begin working, it is important to understand the W's of working in the United States as an international student. So anytime you're interested in working, go ahead and think, what are the W's? So who do you need authorization from in order to work? What kind of proof of authorization do you need? When are you trying to begin working? Did you want to work while you're a student, or are you trying to work after you graduate? And where? The location is very important. Where will you work? Is it an on-campus job or is it an off-campus job? And then why are you going to benefit from this job? How is it related to your major? How is it related to your field of study? So these are all questions that we encourage you to ask when you're thinking about employment in the United States. So international students in F1 and J1 status are eligible for various types of employment while you're here in the United States. So you might have employment authorization during your academic program as well as after your academic program. And during your program, if you are in F1 status, you can work on campus. That's basically like a student appointment. If you want to work off campus, that would be through curricular practical training. And then of course, you're able to volunteer and do unpaid internships. J1 students also are able to work during their program through pre-completion academic training, and they can also do on-campus employment. After your program, so after you graduate, F1 students are eligible to apply for optional practical training. And then J1 students can do post-completion academic training. And don't get too overwhelmed if these terms are new to you. I know it's a lot of information, but just know that you do have options to pursue employment either before you graduate or after you graduate. And we'll be going into the specifics of each of these later on in the presentation. So let's look at a typical student's timeline at UC San Diego. And I apologize, the calendar years are a bit dated, but just imagine that it says 2022 at the top there. So typically, newly admitted students would arrive to the United States and start their program of study in the fall term. So once you arrive, and if you look at the start date on your I-20, now you're eligible for on-campus employment. So if your I-20 says September 20th, 2022, you can start working on campus on September 20th, 2022. In order to be eligible for off-campus employment, students are generally required to complete at least one academic year, which is 3 academic terms. So for example, if you arrived in the fall, you can work on campus for fall quarter, winter quarter, and spring quarter. And then if you want to work off campus, you would be eligible to do that starting in summer 2023. So let's go ahead and dig a little deeper into the different types of work authorization. It's important that you make sure that you understand whether you need authorization to work before you start any employment. So don't start working and then ask the question, oh, do I need authorization? You want to ask that question, do I need authorization before you start working? Some types of employment, like on-campus employment, are incidental to your status and they actually don't require any authorization. And then some types of employment do require authorization, and that is granted by our office. And then other types of employment, our office would recommend, but then would have to be authorized by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So there's different, depending on the employment, will dictate which kind of authorization you'll need. So on-campus employment as an F1 or J1 student, and if you have entered the United States, you are absolutely eligible to work on campus. On-campus work is defined as work on the school premises. For example, this would be working at the library on campus, UCSD library, or the dining or residence halls, or as a teaching assistant or a researcher. So in addition, you can work on campus and be employed by an on-campus commercial firm that provides direct student services. So it could be employment at one of the restaurants in the Price Center. So here's a question for you. Is working at Starbucks at Price Center considered on-campus employment for international students? If you think yes, go ahead and raise your hand. All right, looks like the majority of people in this webinar are saying yes. So yes, absolutely. If you want to work at Starbucks at Price Center starting October 1st, and you are here in the United States, you have a valid I-20, you're enrolled full-time, you can definitely start working at the Starbucks at Price Center. However, if you wanted to work at the Starbucks in La Jolla off campus, you would not be eligible to do that because that is off campus. So on campus, you may work. Off campus, you'll need authorization. Important to note is that on-campus employment does not need to be related to your field of study. During the academic year, you can work up to 20 hours a week. And then during the summer, spring, winter breaks, you can work full-time. You don't have to abide by the 20-hour rule. So what type of authorization do you need for on-campus employment? For F1 students, you actually don't need any permissions from ISPO. You're able to work without authorization. You don't need a support letter. Your I-20 is enough to show that you're eligible to work on campus. It's incidental to your status. J1 students, on the other hand, do need to request and receive a support letter from our office that authorizes your employment. Okay, so now let's move on to off-campus employment. F1 students in their academic program of study will generally request off-campus employment in the form of what is called curricular practical training. And for J1 students, off-campus employment authorization during your program of study is called pre-completion academic training. And again, graduate students can work up to 20 hours a week during the academic year, and then you can work full-time during breaks. However, PhD students who have advanced to candidacy might be eligible to work full-time during the academic year, but that's only after you've advanced candidacy. Okay, so let's look a little bit deeper about in terms of CPT eligibility. So in order to engage in CPT, you'll need to receive a job offer letter from an employer. So that is step one. CPT is also linked to a course or participation in a quarterly program. So every quarter that you are applying for curricular practical training, you'll need to ensure that you are either enrolled in a course or you'll receive credit. Or if you're working in the summer, you actually don't need to enroll in a course. You would be doing the summer cooperative education program. So think of curricular practical training. Basically, you're getting course credit for the employment, for the work that you're doing, but you're getting course credit for it. So let's say you find a great internship and they offer you a position from October 20th until March 20th. So these dates overlap between two quarters. So it overlaps between fall quarter, which starts in September, and then winter quarter, which will start in January. So when you apply for CPT, you have to apply for it every quarter. It's a quarterly based, because you're enrolled in a course. So for a job that went from or from October all the way through March, you would have to apply for CPT in the fall quarter, as well as submit an application for the winter quarter. And then also really important to note is that the work that you're doing through CPT, this is off-campus employment, it does have to be related to your program of study. So your job duties relate to your major, and you have to have met the 1 academic year requirement. So that means that you have been enrolled full-time for at least 3 quarters on the same CVIS number in active status. And CPT is authorized through ISPO. So it is not something that you have to apply with USCIS, the immigration services. It is something that you apply through our office. So our processing time is usually about 10 to 15 business days. But it's relatively easy to apply through our office since it's done on site. If you are a J1 student and you want to work off campus, then you would apply for pre-completion academic training. So it's the same requirements as curricular practical training, except for one. Instead of having to enroll for 1 academic year, you can actually just apply for 1 quarter for on the same CVIS number in active status. And just like CPT, academic training is authorized through ISPO. So I wanted to make a note about the 1 academic year requirement, because some students might have already started accruing time towards this requirement. So for example, if you did your undergraduate degree at a different institution in the United States and you transferred your CVIS record to UC San Diego, then you have already accrued 1 year or more of the 1 academic year requirement. Or perhaps you did a change of status. So you've been inside the United States in a different status, and then you changed to F1, but you've already been here for a couple of years. Or perhaps you've been a UCSD student for your undergrad as well, and you simply did a change of level. If any of those scenarios are what describe you, then most likely you've already met the 1 academic year requirement, and you would be eligible to start CPT starting in the fall quarter. And then for graduate students, there is an exception to the 1 academic year requirement. So if you are required to engage in practical training prior to the 1 academic year, that is something that you would work through with your department. So if your department requires that you engage in this practical training as part of your studies, there might be an exception to that, to the 1 academic year requirement rule. And then, so just to show you, if CPT is authorized, it would go on the 2nd page of your I-20. There's a section of your I-20 that says employment information, and that is where you would find the CPT authorization. And then for academic training, that would also be shown on your DS 2019. Okay, we have a very quick video.
I guess I can take random jobs like babysitting or driving Uber, since they're not real jobs anyways.
So what do you think? Do you think it's true that you can drive for Uber or do babysitting? If you think this is true, raise your hand. It is false. And that's, it looks like all of you are definitely understanding this because I only see 6 people that raised their hands, and then a few of you took your hand down after thinking about it, I think. So if it is off campus, you need to have authorization. If it is curricular practical training or academic training, it has to be related to your field of study. So taking these random jobs off campus without authorization is not a good idea, as that could negatively impact your immigration status. Okay, so we have discussed on-campus employment, off-campus employment during your program of study. And now let's move on to talking about working after you graduate, so after you complete your program of study. So F1 students are eligible to apply for optional practical training, which gives you, it's a benefit of a maximum of 12 months of authorization to work. If you are a STEM major, you would be eligible to apply for an additional 24 months of an extension of that employment authorization. And this process, it is, we at ISPO, we would recommend the employment authorization, but it's authorized through USCIS. So it's through a government office that you would apply for this authorization, and ISPO simply does the recommendation. For J1 students, you would be applying for post-completion academic training, and depending upon the length of your program, whether it's 2 years or 5 years, would determine the duration of your academic training. And academic training is authorized by ISPO, so that it does not go through a government office. So here's some information about OPT eligibility. You must be inside of the United States in order to apply for it. You can apply for OPT 90 days before your program end date or as late as 60 days after. So there's a 5-month application window. You do need to have an active CVIS record and have at least met the 1-year academic requirements, and it has to be related to your field of study. So notice that unlike CPT, so curricular practical training requires you to have a job offer. For OPT, you do not need to have a job offer in order to apply. So you would apply for the employment authorization, you would receive an EAD card, and then you would report your employment when you begin working, but you do not need a job offer in order to apply for OPT. For J1 students, you would be eligible to apply for academic training, as I mentioned. Important to note is that you don't have that 5-month window to apply. You do need to apply for academic training before your program end date. And then keep in mind that our processing time is usually 10 to 15 business days. So if you're graduating, let's say June 15th, make sure that you submit your application at the very beginning of June, like June 1st, to make sure that it gets processed in time. Making sure that you have an active CVIS record, that you've been enrolled for a minimum of 1 quarter, and that the work that you do is related to your field of study. So here's a question for you. What would you do? So can you continue to work on CPT even after you graduate and you complete your program? If you think this is yes, raise your hand. Can you work on CPT after you graduate and have completed your program? Okay, I see a handful of you raising your hand. So CPT is curricular practical training, which means that you would be enrolled in a course and getting course credit for the work that you're doing. After you graduate, then you would not be enrolled. You would have completed all of your course requirements and you would be applying for OPT, so not CPT. So you cannot apply for CPT after you graduate because CPT is part of work authorization that requires course enrollment. So if you raised your hand, sorry, it was false. So take your hand down. Okay, we have another short little video. Let's see.
Now that I have a social security card, I can work anywhere, anytime.
Okay, not a single person raised their hand for that, so great job. So a social security card does not give you authorization to work. If you are authorized to engage in paid employment, then your employer will request a social security number from you. And you would need that number in order to get paid. In order to apply for the social security number, you would have to, you would request a support letter from ISPO. You would take that support letter, the job offer, and the proof of your employment to the Social Security Administration office, and then you would wait for your social security number to arrive in the mail. So a lot of students think that having a social security number is the same as having work authorization, but it's not true. So a social security number can only be used when it's paired with proper work authorizations such as on-campus employment, curricular practical training, academic training, or optional practical training. So while your work authorization might expire, the social security number actually doesn't. Once you're issued a social security number, that's the number that you'll have kind of forever. So if you came back to the United States 10 years from now, or you immigrated here, you would still have that same social security number. It is unique to you. So I know I shared a lot of information and it might seem overwhelming, hopefully not, but if you're confused about where to start, we definitely encourage you to explore iWork.ucsd.edu just to help you to understand the support system and all of the resources that are here to support you. So there are a lot of resources on campus that are here to support you. So when it comes time for you to begin your employment search, just take a look and look around you. You have the Career Center. That is a great place to start. Some departments even have career advisors within your department to help you find positions that are directly related to your field of study. So definitely check in with your department in terms of like planning your program end dates and when you're going to complete. The graduate division has great support services to help you understand, the role of graduate students on the UCSD campus. And then think about faculty and alumni. They are a rich network of graduates and leaders who have paved the way for your success. And then, of course, our office, we are here to support you as well. So just know that you are very, very supported as you embark on your journey here at UC San Diego. So just another plug for the Career Center. They can help you write and review your resume, cover letters. They can do virtual interviews so that you are really ready when the time comes for you to start employment. They can also, if you're not sure about like what kind of jobs you're interested in, they can help you discover your interests and research what kind of opportunities might be available to you to kind of pique your interest. And then they also host resource fairs and networking events. And they also help you to get connected with job search tools like Handshake, Going Global, LinkedIn, and Indeed. So for those of you who are looking to get into graduate programs or medical school, they also have resources there as well. So don't wait until your final year to get connected with the Career Center. I would recommend visiting them as early as possible, just so you can see what resources are available to you and get prepared early. And then I'm sure you are all already familiar with iPortal.ucsd.edu. This is the same the online system that you requested your I-20. So you would, if you need a support letter for employment authorization or for going to the Social Security Administration office or applying for your OPT I-20 or CPT I-20 or academic training, DS 2019, you would be requesting it from iPortal.ucsd.edu. And the same system that you used to log into to apply for your I-20, that's where you'll be requesting all of your other support items. So I hope that you learned a lot from today's session. I know it was a lot of information. All of this information is on our website. So definitely go on our website and get familiar with all of the employment information. And we hope that you'll follow us on social media as well. We post lots of updates about ways to get involved. And sometimes regulatory updates as well on there. So definitely follow us on there. And then download the UC San Diego mobile app. This can send you notifications that can help you to navigate campus. And you should already be receiving emails from the iStudents newsletter, which will be sent to your UC San Diego email. We do our best to keep you informed and updated, but remember that it is up to you to stay updated and informed. So check your emails, check in with our office. If there's anything that you don't understand, if you have any questions, make sure that you do reach out. So looks like we do have quite a bit of time to answer questions live. I'm going to invite my co-presenters or co-hosts to answer any questions that have come in through the chat. Anything that has come through, feel free to jump on and speak to some of those questions.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read out some of the questions that we've saved for the end here that maybe other students would like to know the answers to. So Lisa or Joe or myself can answer. The first question is how to prove that their job, probably for CPT or OPT, is related to their major. So I can give my thoughts on that. So, the regulations don't specifically say, and that's because obviously there's so many different majors across the US, there's not going to be one, master list of what jobs qualify for which major. For CPT though, when you apply for CPT, it does go to your department first for approval. So we kind of rely on them to verify that it is related to your field of study. And then for OPT, after graduation, once you get approved, you get access to something called the SCVP portal, and that's where you self-report your employment. And there is a text box where you type in how it's related to your major. So it's kind of, it's your responsibility as long as you can make that connection, think about the classes that you took at UCSD for your major and how they prepared you for that type of work. I usually tell students, your major best. So if you can kind of make that connection, it's probably fine. If you have to really stretch, you might want to kind of think twice about it. So that's my opinion. I don't know if Lisa or Joe has anything else to add.
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. So for OPT, you're going to be reporting your employment in the SCVP portal. So you'll have to describe how it's related to your field of study. And for CPT, again, it's something that your department would approve. But I always try to encourage students to imagine you're sitting in front of a judge and they're asking you, how is this related to your field of study? It's really up to you to be able to make the case and make the connection between the job and your field of study. So, the spirit of the regulations is that you would be getting employment authorization to use what you learned in your studies and apply it in the workforce. So it's really just an opportunity to apply what you learned. So as long as you're kind of staying within that spirit, then I think you'll be good.
And then one more thing I'll add, and I'll put in the chat as well. I also encourage students to utilize our Career Center on campus. They have a lot of resources for how to find jobs in your, in your major. And then what I'm going to put in the chat, we have a session with them next Thursday at 3 p.m. It's hybrid, so you can come in person or join virtually, where they'll be going over all the different resources they have. So I really encourage you to go to that. And the schedule and the registration for that is at iorientation.ucsd.edu. And again, I'll put that in the chat in a second here. Okay, so next question, Lisa, really quick. For the letter request for the SSN, they want to verify like that is not for work permission, correct? It's just for the SSN.
Right. Yeah. So if you're requesting a Social Security support letter, that would be something that you would take to the Social Security Administration office in order to request your Social Security number, which is something you need in order to get paid, but it's not work authorization.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I know the questions are coming in now. Let me kind of scan through here. Okay, let's see. I'm a STEM major student. My program duration on the I-20 is 2 years, but I only received a 1-year visa. When should I apply for the 24-month OPT? Or is it a must that I should renew my visa before it expires? So, I mean, it kind of applies to everyone that you can be in the US with an expired visa as long as your I-20 is valid or you have valid OPT. So it's not a must that you renew your visa. And you can only renew your visa outside the US. So it's just if you leave the US after it expires that you would need to renew it. Do you have anything to add to that, Lisa?
No, I think you covered it well.
Okay. Let's see. How soon can F1 students start working on campus this fall quarter? Do we have to wait until classes start? Lisa, did you want to answer that one?
So you want to look at the start date on your I-20. So you can start working depending on what it says on your I-20. So if you started classes in the summer, for example, then you might be able to start earlier than the start of fall quarter classes. It just depends on the start date on your I-20.
I think if you are a CVIS transfer, that, if you were already in the US and transferred here, I believe you can start working as soon as the transfer happens.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got here? Lots of SSN questions. Is it okay to not have a SSN by the time we start TAing? Great question.
Yeah, you don't need so a Social Security number is not work authorization, so you don't need it to start working. But if you want to get paid, you're going to need that number.
Right. And actually, Joe, our colleague here, just sent a message. I don't think you all can see it in the chat, but clarifying for the starting on work on campus. So like we said, for the CVIS transfers, you can start as soon as the transfer happens. And if you're what's called an initial, if your I-20 says initial attendance on it, you can actually start 30 days before the start date if you have arrived in the US.
So I see there was a question, if you're going to TA this fall and you need a Social Security number, you should contact your department to ask for the offer letter, and that's enough to request a Social Security number, and you don't need a ISPO support letter. And that's not the case. You need to have a job offer letter and the ISPO support letter. So the job offer is saying that you have an offer of employment, and then the support letter from our office is going to say that you're in valid F1 status and you're eligible to work.
Great, thanks, Lisa. There are a couple of questions about fellowships and if they qualify for SSNs, or if they have to wait until they actually start TAing.
I mean, so as a fellowship, is that part of your funding package, or is that like you're getting paid to do research? I think maybe that's something you would check in with your department, because if there's a job offer and they're paying you, like a stipend, I'm pretty sure you're going to need a Social Security number. But if it's something that they awarded you as part of like almost like a scholarship, then I don't think you need a Social Security number for that. But double check with your department. They will definitely know.
Okay, student says they have a Social Security number already from their undergraduate studies, but it's stamped with, quote, only valid with DHS authorization. Can this still be used for my job as a graduate TA? If not, do I need to apply for an updated SSN?
So once you have a social security number that's been issued to you, you will have that's permanently assigned to you. So you wouldn't apply for a second social security number. So if you have one already, you can use it for your next term of employment.
Great. A student asking if lab volunteers require an SSN. So I'm assuming when you say volunteer, that means unpaid, which would mean that you can't get an SSN and that you don't need it. So it's only for paid work that you would be eligible for an SSN.
Right. You need to have a job offer to apply for. You need to have a job offer for paid employment to apply for a social security number.
Okay, let's see. We still have plenty of time. Is there an eligible company's criteria for working in OPT status? Criteria for, so I'm not, if I'm understanding the question correctly, like, so for OPT, the employers don't have to do anything. It doesn't require them to sponsor you as like, for example, another type of visa called H-1B does. They just have to offer you a job. So if that's what you mean, yeah, there's no, there's nothing required of the companies.
Right. So when you're on OPT, you're still maintaining your F1 status, and you have employment authorization. So that is something you can explain to the employer when you're applying for a job, that you're eligible, you're authorized to work inside of the United States. You're in F1 status.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, looks like Joe's typing an answer to the last question. Anyone else have any other questions you want to put in the Q&A here? And I think our colleague Grace put in a couple things in the chat to the webinar next week the session I talked about next week. So take a look at that.
Okay, so feel free to keep having the questions come through if anything comes up, but I'm going to go through a few more slides. So just to let you know, if you're interested in meeting up with some other new students, we have meetup groups, both regional groups and interest groups. So go to iorientationucsd.com/meetup. And this is just a great way to connect with other students. I think there's like board games and travel, and if you're from a European country or different regions of the world, you can meet up with other like-minded individuals. So definitely register for those. And then those are also posted on the iEvents calendar. I would recommend bookmarking this site because there are a ton of awesome events for you to get involved in throughout your time at UCSD. So this is kind of like, you just go on there and you can see what's happening in the upcoming weeks ahead. And then a few final reminders. Go to iorientation.ucsd.com to register for other sessions like the meetup groups. And then visit iupdates.ucsd.edu for the most up-to-date information from ISPO. Our weekly newsletter can be found at inews.ucsd.edu. Our Zoom Zoom advising hours, icontact.ucsd.edu, and then find us on social media, and we hope that you will follow us. And then please do go ahead and fill out the survey to confirm your attendance, and just let us know if there's anything that we can improve upon, if there's other ways that we can better serve you. We do want to hear from you so that we can make improvements. We'll be happy to take compliments as well. And then thank you so much for attending today's sessions. Whether you're joining us from inside the United States or you're still in your home country getting ready to pack your bags and travel here, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. And we wish you success in the upcoming fall quarter. And we hope to see you soon. See if there's any final questions. We're happy to stay online for the next like 10 or 15 minutes or so if there's any additional questions.
Lisa, could you possibly go back to the survey slide and then maybe we can answer any additional questions then?
Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
Oh, you're on mute, Lisa.
Thank you. I was just saying that it looks like we answered all of the questions. We'll stay on for a few more minutes in case a few last minute questions come through. But if you think of a question later on, you're always welcome to reach out to our office either through Zoom advising or visiting us at the front desk or sending us an email. But hopefully we were able to answer most of your questions. Oh, we got a few more coming through. So yeah, the webinar, the recording of the webinar will be posted on iWork.ucsd.edu. That should be posted in the next couple of days. And you can see other webinars as well on that link. Yes, if you, so someone asked, the request for the support letter is on the services. So if you log into iportal.ucsd.edu, you would go to services and you'll see a long list of different request types that you can request. So you would find the one that is applicable to you, whether it's a Social Security number support letter, or if you're a J1 student needing employment authorization, you just scroll through and find what it is that you need. And then that is where you would make your request. So Grace just posted in the chat where the webinars will be stored and where you can access them later. Thank you, Grace. So the types of, someone asked, what type of volunteering opportunities will need work authorization? Most volunteer opportunities do not require work authorization. However, I think a few places like if you were to volunteer at the VA, you might need some sort of support letter. So that is something you would just work with the organization or the company that you are volunteering at to see if they need any kind of authorization for you to be there. So someone asked, what survey do you need to complete to show that you've attended? So it's the one on the screen right now, but you would also be getting an email, I believe, the next day or two in case the survey link does not work for you for some reason. All right, any last minute questions? Going once, going twice. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. And again, we hope to see you soon. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar since it appears that we answered all of the questions. So we hope you have a good rest of your day and a great start to the fall quarter. Take care. Thank you.